The needle is a cold thing, steel sharp, unyielding. But when you hold it long enough, when you warm it with the friction of your own skin and the heat of your own blood, it becomes an extension of your soul. My name is Afia, and for the last 6 months my soul has lived in the tip of a size 9 embroidery needle. It was 3:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. The house was silent save for the rhythmic thrum 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 of my old Singer sewing machine and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling under the weight of my memories. I sat at the kitchen table, my back aching, my eyes burning as if they were filled with sand. The light from the single overhead bulb cast long shadows across the mounds of ivory silk and French lace that covered every inch of the surface. This wasn't just fabric. This was Zuri's wedding dress, my daughter, my only child, the girl I had raised on a seamstress's wage, stitching together a life from scraps and remnants. "It has to be perfect," I whispered to the empty room, smoothing a wrinkle in the bodice. "It has to be worthy of her." Zuri was marrying a man from a world I only saw in magazines, a world of country clubs, trust funds, and summer homes in the Hamptons. She was ashamed of where she came from. I knew that. I saw it in the way she stiffened when I spoke too loudly, in the way she apologized for my clothes when she introduced me to her fiancé's friends. But I hoped, that this dress would bridge the gap. I couldn't give her a check for the reception. I couldn't buy her a house. But I could give her this. I had spent my life savings on the materials. The silk was imported from Italy. I had skipped meals for 3 months to afford the yardage. The lace was vintage Chantilly salvaged from an antique shop in New Orleans where I used to work. And the pearls. I looked at the hem of the dress, hundreds of tiny seed pearls sewn on one by one. They weren't bought. They were mine. They were from the necklace my own mother gave me on her deathbed. I had cut the string, letting the pearls fall into a bowl like tears, and I was sewing them into Zuri's train. "Grandma is walking with you, baby," I murmured, securing a pearl with a double knot. "You won't walk alone." I worked until the sun came up. When the first ray of dawn hit the dress, it shimmered. It didn't sparkle like cheap sequins. It glowed. It had a depth, a weight, a history. It looked like moonlight caught in a net. I stood up, my knees cracking. I ran my hand over the bodice. It was done. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever created. I folded it carefully, wrapping it in a clean white sheet because I couldn't afford a garment bag. I pinned a note to the front. "For my Zuri, with all the love I have. Mom." I showered, put on my best Sunday dress, the one with the least amount of fraying at the cuffs, and walked to the bus stop. I held the bundle to my chest like a newborn baby. I was tired, but I was happy. I was going to make my daughter proud. Zuri lived in a penthouse downtown. The building was glass and steel cold and imposing. The doorman looked at my worn shoes and the sheet-wrapped bundle with suspicion. "Delivery?" he asked, not looking me in the eye. "I'm Zuri's mother," I said, lifting my chin. He checked a list, frowned, and buzzed me up. The elevator ride was fast, too fast. My stomach dropped. I knocked on the door. Laughter. I heard laughter from inside, bright tinkling laughter like crystal glasses clinking. The door opened. It wasn't Zuri. It was one of her bridesmaids, a girl named Chloe who always looked at me like I was a stain on the carpet. "Oh," Chloe said, her smile faltering. "It's your mom." She turned back to the room. "Zuri, your mom is here." I walked in. The apartment was white. White sofas, white rugs, white walls. It looked like a gallery, not a home. Zuri was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by 4 other girls. They were drinking mimosas. Zuri looked radiant. Her hair was perfect, her skin glowing. She looked like a princess. But when she saw me, the light went out of her eyes. "Mom," she asked, putting down her glass, "what are you doing here? I thought you were coming tomorrow." "I finished it," I said, breathless. "I finished the dress." The room went quiet. The bridesmaids exchanged looks. "Oh," Zuri said. Her voice was flat. "Right. The dress." "You have to see it, honey," I said, stepping forward. "I stayed up all night. The pearls. I used Grandma's pearls." I placed the bundle on the coffee table, pushing aside a stack of Vogue magazines. I untied the sheet. I pulled back the fabric. The dress spilled out. In the stark modern light of the penthouse, the ivory silk looked creamy and rich. The lace looked delicate. The pearls caught the light. It was a masterpiece of old-world craftsmanship. "Wow," one of the bridesmaids whispered. "That's detailed." I looked at Zuri. I waited for the gasp. I waited for the tears. I waited for her to run to me and hug me. Zuri stood up. She walked over to the dress. She looked down at it. She didn't touch it. She looked at the hand-stitched hem. She looked at the vintage lace. And then she wrinkled her nose. "It smells," she said. "What?" I asked. "It smells like your apartment, like cabbage and old wood." "It's the starch," I said quickly. "It will air out. Zuri, look at the lace. It's Chantilly." She reached out with 2 fingers and pinched the fabric as if it were dirty. "Mom," she said, her voice tight. "It's heavy. It's old-fashioned." "It's vintage," I corrected. "It's timeless." "It's homemade," she said. The word hung in the air like a curse. Homemade. To me, it meant love. To her, it meant cheap. "Zuri," Chloe said, giggling. "It looks like something from a period drama, like a peasant wedding." The other girls laughed. Zuri's face turned red, not with anger at her friend, but with embarrassment at me. "I can't wear this," she said. "Zuri, please." I pleaded, my hands trembling. "Just try it on. It fits you perfectly. I used your measurements. I poured my soul into this." "That's the problem, Mom," she snapped, turning on me. "I don't want your soul. I want a Vera Wang. I want to look like a modern bride, not a seamstress's daughter." She grabbed the dress. "No!" I cried. She bunched it up. She crushed the silk I had ironed so carefully. She crumpled the lace. She walked to the kitchen. "Zuri, stop." She opened the tall stainless steel trash can, and she shoved the dress inside, right on top of the coffee grounds and orange peels. "There," she said, dusting her hands. "Now we can stop pretending." I stood frozen. I couldn't breathe. It felt like she had reached into my chest and ripped my heart out, then thrown that in the trash, too. My mother's pearls, my savings, my sleepless nights, all in the garbage. "Zuri," I whispered. It was a sound of pure agony. "Don't look at me like that," she hissed. "You embarrassed me, Mom, bringing that rag here. Did you really think I would wear it in front of the Rockefellers, in front of David's family? They would laugh me out of the room." "It's not a rag," I said, tears streaming down my face. "It's love." "Love doesn't buy credibility, Mom," she shouted. "David's family, they are important. They judge everything. If I walk down the aisle in a dress made by a poor woman in a basement, I am a joke. I need to look rich. I need to look like I belong." "You are poor," I said softly. "You come from me. That is who you are." "Not anymore," she said. "I am reinventing myself. And you, and that dress, you don't fit the new version." She pointed to the door. "Go home, Mom. Please, just go." "But the wedding, I don't know if you should come," she said, turning her back on me. "If you're going to bring this energy, maybe it's better if you stay home." I looked at her back. The daughter I had nursed, the daughter I had taught to read. I looked at the trash can. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight, but I had no fight left. I was drained. "Okay," I said. "Okay." She looked back, surprised. "I'll go." I walked to the door. I didn't look back. I walked out of the apartment. I walked into the elevator. I walked out of the building. I sat on a bench on the street corner and I wept. I wept for the little girl who used to sit at my feet while I sewed, playing with buttons. I wept for the woman who had just killed her. I sat there for an hour. The sun moved across the sky. The city bustled around me. I thought about going home, about crawling into bed and never waking up. But then I thought about the pearls, my mother's pearls. They were in the trash, covered in coffee grounds. I couldn't leave them there. They didn't deserve that. Zuri could throw me away, but she couldn't throw my mother away. I stood up. I wiped my face. I waited. I waited until I saw Zuri and her friends leave the building. They came out laughing, getting into a limo. They were going dress shopping, real dress shopping. I waited until the limo turned the corner, then I went back in. The doorman stopped me. "You again?" "I left something." I lied. "My purse. Zuri told me to go get it. She left the door unlocked." He hesitated, but I looked so pathetic, so beaten, he probably didn't see me as a threat. "Make it quick," he grunted. I went up. The door was locked. Of course. But I knew where Zuri hid her spare key, under the mat. A habit I had taught her when she was 10 in case she lost hers at school. It was there. I opened the door. The apartment was empty. It smelled of expensive perfume and cruelty. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the trash can. There it was. My masterpiece, buried under wet coffee filters and sticky fruit. I reached in. I didn't care about the mess. I pulled it out. It was stained, brown spots on the ivory silk, a tear in the lace where she had shoved it. It looked ruined. It looked like me. I hugged it to my chest. The coffee grounds smeared on my Sunday dress. "I've got you," I whispered to the dress. "I've got you." I didn't take anything else. I locked the door. I put the key back. I left. I took the dress home. I laid it out on my kitchen table, the same table where I had made it. I examined the damage. The stains were deep. The silk was watermarked. Most people would say it was garbage. But I am a seamstress. I know that fabric has a memory, but it also has forgiveness. I know that a stain can be covered, a tear can be mended, and sometimes a broken thing can be made more beautiful than it was before. I went to my cupboard. I took out my supplies. Vinegar, baking soda, lemon juice. I started to clean. Gently, dab by dab. I worked for hours. The coffee stains faded. The silk dried, but the watermarks remained, shadows of the insult. I looked at them. I couldn't hide them. So, I decided to highlight them. I went to my stash, my secret stash. A box of Swarovski crystals I had found at an estate sale years ago. I had been saving them for something special. This was it. I threaded my needle. Where there was a stain, I sewed a crystal. Where there was a tear, I sewed a cluster of pearls. I didn't try to make it look like a pristine virgin white dress anymore. I made it look like a constellation. I made it look like a storm that had been frozen in time and turned into diamonds. I worked for 3 days and 3 nights. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I wasn't sewing a wedding dress anymore. I was sewing a suit of armor. I was sewing my dignity back together. "She said it was a dress for poor people," I muttered as I stitched a line of crystals along the hem. "Fine, I will make it a dress for a queen." I wasn't going to stay home. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to that wedding, and I was going to wear the dress, not to ruin her day, but to show her, to show everyone, that you cannot throw a mother's love in the trash and expect it to stay there. Love rises, and sometimes it shines so bright it blinds you. I tied the final knot. I bit the thread. I held the dress up. It was heavy now, heavy with crystals, heavy with history. It caught the light from the window and exploded into rainbows. It was no longer simple. It was magnificent. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "Ready," I whispered. The day of the wedding dawned gray and humid, the kind of heavy southern heat that presses against your skin. But inside my small apartment, I felt cool. I stood in front of my clouded mirror. I put on the dress. It slid over my skin like cool water. The weight of the crystals and pearls felt grounding like armor. I didn't have money for a hairstylist. I pulled my graying hair up into a high regal bun, securing it with a single pearl-tipped pin, the last pearl from my mother's necklace that hadn't gone onto the dress. I didn't have makeup. I pinched my cheeks to bring color to them. I stood tall. I looked at myself. I didn't see the seamstress who hunched over machines for 40 years. I saw a queen. "Afia," I whispered to my reflection. "Head up. You are not crashing a party. You are bringing the light." I walked to the bus stop. People stared. A woman in a grocery store uniform stopped her cart and gaped. "Honey," she said, "you look like an angel." "I'm just a mother," I smiled. I took the bus to the other side of town to the Grand Magnolia Ballroom. I sat in the back, protecting my train from the dirty floor. The other passengers gave me space as if they sensed the gravity of what I was wearing. When I arrived at the venue, the valet looked at me with confusion. "Ma'am, the service entrance is in the back." He thought I was staff. Even in this dress, he saw my worn shoes, my calloused hands. "I am the mother of the bride," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of thunder. He blinked. He stepped back. He opened the main door for me. The ballroom was a sea of pastels and diamonds. White roses covered every surface. A string quartet played Mozart. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I stood in the shadows of the entryway for a moment observing. There was Zuri. She was standing near the cake, a 10-tier monstrosity that looked like a plastic castle. She was wearing her Vera Wang dress. It was white. It was crisp. It was modern. And it was utterly, completely soulless. It looked like something mass-produced for a mannequin. It didn't move with her. It caged her. She was laughing with her new mother-in-law, Mrs. Ellington, a woman who wore her wealth like a weapon, Mrs. Ellington was looking at Zuri with critical eyes, adjusting Zuri's veil, critiquing her posture. I saw Zuri flinch. My daughter had traded a mother who adored her for a mother-in-law who tolerated her, and she thought this was an upgrade. I took a deep breath. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked onto the marble floor. Click, click, click. My heels were old, but they sounded sharp in the vast room. The first person to see me was a young man near the door. He dropped his hors d'oeuvre. Then a woman gasped. The sound rippled through the room like a wave. Silence spread outward from me, circle by circle, until the entire ballroom was quiet. Even the string quartet stopped playing, their bows hovering over the strings. I kept walking. The lights of the chandeliers hit the dress. The crystals I had sewn over the coffee stains exploded with light. They didn't look like stains anymore. They looked like nebulas. The vintage lace mended with gold thread looked like royalty. The pearls on the train dragged with a soft shh sound like the ocean kissing the sand. I wasn't wearing a poor person's dress. I was wearing a galaxy. Zuri turned around. She was holding a glass of champagne. When she saw me, the glass slipped from her fingers. Smash! It shattered on the floor, splashing champagne onto her pristine Vera Wang. She didn't notice. She was staring at me. Her face went pale, then gray. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terror I had never seen before. She looked at the dress. She recognized it. She recognized the lace she had called old. She recognized the silk she had called heavy. But she couldn't understand how the rag in her trash can had become this blinding vision walking toward her. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice was a squeak. I stopped 5 feet away from her. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at her. "Hello, Zuri." What are you doing?" she stammered. You weren't supposed to come." "It's my daughter's wedding," I said, my voice ringing clear in the silent hall. "I wouldn't miss it." Mrs. Ellington stepped forward. She looked me up and down, her eyes narrowing. She didn't recognize me as the seamstress she had fired 30 years ago, not yet. She just saw a rival, a woman who was outshining the bride. "Who is this?" Mrs. Ellington demanded. "Zuri, who is this person wearing that?" She pointed at my dress. "That is my mother," Zuri said, her voice trembling. "Your mother." Mrs. Ellington laughed. A cold, cruel sound. "The seamstress, I thought she was poor," I finished for her. I turned to Mrs. Ellington. "I am poor Mrs. Ellington. I have $50 in my bank account. I took the bus here." A murmur went through the crowd. "But poverty," I continued, "is a state of the wallet, not the soul." I turned back to Zuri. "You threw this in the trash," I said softly. Zuri flinched. Tears welled in her eyes. "Mom, don't. Not here." "You called it a rag," I said, stepping closer. "You said it smelled like cabbage. You said it was for poor people." I spread the skirt of the dress. The crystals caught the light blindingly bright. "Look at it, Zuri. Look at the stains." I pointed to a cluster of crystals on the bodice. "That was coffee grounds. I covered it with diamonds." I pointed to the lace on the sleeve. "That was a tear from your fingernail when you shoved it in the bin. I mended it with pearls." Zuri was shaking now, visibly shaking. "Why?" she choked out. "Why are you doing this to humiliate me?" "No," I said, "to show you. Show me that you can throw away a gift," I said. "But you cannot throw away the love that made it. I picked this up from the garbage, Zuri. I cleaned it. I mended it. Because that is what mothers do. We take the mess you make and we turn it into something beautiful." I looked at her fancy dress. The champagne stain was spreading on her hem. "Your dress is expensive," I said. "It's perfect, but it's cold. My dress has a heartbeat." The groom David walked up. He looked confused. He looked from Zuri to me. "Zuri," he asked, is this true?" Zuri couldn't speak. She was hyperventilating. The shame was crashing down on her. Not the shame of having a poor mother, but the shame of what she had done. She looked at the crowd. They weren't laughing at me. They were looking at me with awe, and they were looking at her with judgment. They saw a girl who had thrown her mother's labor in the trash. The illusion she had built, the perfect, wealthy socialite, was cracking. Zuri gasped. She clutched her chest. "I can't." Her face turned white. Her eyes rolled back. "Zuri!" David shouted. She collapsed. She fell to the floor in a heap of white tulle. The room erupted in chaos. "Call a doctor. Give her air." I didn't run to her. I stood still. David was fanning her. Mrs. Ellington was shouting orders. I watched. It wasn't a heart attack. It was a panic attack. It was the weight of her own conscience finally crushing her. I had spent my life picking her up when she fell. Today I let her stay on the floor. Zuri woke up a minute later. She sat up disoriented. She saw me standing there. She started to cry. Ugly, raw sobs. "I'm sorry," she wailed. "Mom, I'm so sorry." She reached out a hand to me. "Help me up." I looked at her hand. I remembered her hand shoving the dress into the trash. I stepped forward, but I didn't take her hand. I crouched down so we were eye to eye. "You can get up, Zuri," I said gently. "You have strong legs." I made sure of that. "Mom, please." "I love you," I said. "I will always love you, but I am done carrying you." I stood up. I turned to the crowd. "I apologize for the interruption," I said. "My daughter is fine. She is just realizing who she is." I looked at Mrs. Ellington. She was staring at me. Her face was pale. She was looking at the stitching on my dress. She recognized it. "That stitch," she whispered. "The invisible hem." She looked at my face, really looked at me. "Afia," she whispered. "Afia Bakari." "Hello, Mrs. Ellington," I said. "It's been 30 years. You're the seamstress," she breathed. "The one I fired." "The one you accused of stealing a button," I corrected. "A button I had sewn onto your coat for free." The crowd went silent again. A new drama was unfolding. "You fired Zuri's mother?" David asked his mother, shocked. "I didn't know," Mrs. Ellington stammered. "I didn't know she was—" "You didn't know I was a person," I said. "You thought I was a machine." I turned back to the door. "I'm leaving now," I said. "Enjoy the wedding. Zuri, fix your hem. It's crooked." I walked away. I walked back down the aisle, the train of my galaxy dress flowing behind me. No one stopped me. I walked out of the ballroom, out of the hotel, and into the night air. I sat on a bench outside the hotel. My feet hurt, but my heart felt light. The door opened. David came out. He sat next to me. He looked tired. "She's asking for you," he said. "I know." "She told me everything," David said. "About the dress, about the trash." He looked at me. "I didn't know she could be like that. Cruel." "She was scared," I said. "Fear makes people cruel. She was afraid of not belonging." "She belongs with me," David said. "But I don't like who she is when she's trying to impress my mother." He sighed. "Your dress," he said. "It's incredible. You made that." "I did." "You're an artist, Mrs. Bakari." "I'm a seamstress, David." "No," he said. "You're an artist. And I think Zuri needs to learn from you. Not just sewing, but grace." He stood up. "I'm going to go marry your daughter," he said. "But things are going to change. We're not going to live in my mother's shadow anymore. And Zuri is going to apologize. For real." "She will," I said. "Give her time." He went back inside. I stayed on the bench. I looked at the dress. I took a pair of small scissors from my purse. I cut a single pearl from the hem. I held it in my hand. "Grandma," I whispered, "we did it." The morning after the wedding was quiet, the kind of silence that follows a hurricane when the air is scrubbed clean and the world feels new but fragile. I woke up in my own bed. My feet still ached from the walk, but my soul felt rested. The dress hung on the back of my bedroom door. In the morning light, the crystals didn't blaze. They shimmered softly like morning dew. It was just a dress now. It had done its job. I made coffee. I sat at my sewing machine. I picked up a piece of blue cotton. A neighbor needed a hem fixed. I started to sew. In, out, in, out. The rhythm was my heartbeat. I wasn't waiting for Zuri. I had let her go. I had given her to her new life, and I had given myself back to mine. But life has a way of returning what belongs to you. At 10:00 a.m. there was a knock at the door. It was hesitant, soft, not the knock of a customer. I opened it. Zuri stood there. She wasn't wearing her honeymoon clothes. She was wearing jeans and an old sweater, one I had knitted for her years ago. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup. Her eyes were puffy. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Mom," she whispered. She looked at the floor. She looked at her hands. She couldn't look at me. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked into the small apartment she had been so ashamed of. She looked at the peeling paint, the old furniture. But she didn't sneer. She looked at them like a thirsty traveler seeing water. She sat at the kitchen table. "I didn't go," she said. "Go where?" "To the honeymoon. David went to clear his head. I stayed at a hotel." She took a shaky breath. "I couldn't leave Mom. Not after last night." She looked at the dress hanging on the door. "It's beautiful," she said. "I was blind." "You weren't blind, Zuri," I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "You were looking through the wrong lens. You were looking through the lens of fear of not being enough." "I wanted them to like me," she sobbed. "David's family, they are so perfect, and I felt so small. I thought if I erased you, I would fit in. And now I know," she said, tears dripping into her coffee, "that erasing you erased the best part of me." I stood up. I walked to the dress. "There is something I didn't show you last night," I said. "Something I hid inside." "What?" "When I rescued the dress from the trash," I said, running my hand over the silk. "I didn't just sew crystals on it. I sewed memories." I reached for the hem. "Come here." Zuri walked over. I turned the dress inside out. The lining was soft cotton, and there, stitched into the seams in neat, tiny blue letters, were words. Zuri squinted. "What is this?" "Read it," I said. She read the first line stitched near the heart. "For Zuri, my first miracle. May you always know you are loved." She gasped. She traced the line near the waist. "Be strong, my daughter. Your spine is made of steel and silk." And the line at the very bottom near the train. "Even if you walk away, this thread will always lead you home." Zuri fell to her knees. She buried her face in the dress. She wailed. It was the sound of a dam breaking. "You sewed this after I threw it away," she choked out. "Yes," I said, stroking her hair. "I sewed it while I was crying. I sewed it while I was angry, but mostly I sewed it because I knew one day you would need to find these words." "I don't deserve you," she wept. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." "Get up," I said, gently pulling her to her feet. "We don't kneel in this house. We stand." I hugged her. She smelled of sorrow and regret. "I forgive you," I whispered, and I meant it. The anger was gone. It had been stitched into the dress, leaving me light. Zuri stayed with me for 3 days. It was like when she was a child. We cooked, we cleaned. She helped me sort buttons. We didn't talk about the wedding. We talked about us. "I hate the socialite life," she admitted one night eating soup. "It's exhausting, pretending to be someone else." "Then stop," I said. "Be Zuri, the girl who likes to draw, the girl who laughs too loud." "David, he likes that girl." She smiled. "He told me he fell in love with me because I was real, and then I spent 2 years trying to be fake." On the 4th day, the phone rang. Zuri answered it. Her face went pale. It's Mrs. Ellington," she whispered. "Imani." My stomach tightened. The woman who fired me. The woman who looked at me with disdain. What does she want? "She wants to come over," Zuri said. "She says she needs to speak to you. Alone." I hesitated. "Tell her to come," I said. "I'm not afraid of her." Imani Ellington arrived in a black town car. She walked up the path to my small house. She was wearing a Chanel suit, but she looked diminished. Her shoulders were slumped. Her face was drawn. I opened the door. "Mrs. Ellington," I said. "Afia," she said. She didn't look at me with judgment. She looked at me with shame. "May I come in?" "It's small," I warned, "and it smells like cabbage." She flinched. "I deserve that." She walked in. She sat on my worn sofa. She refused tea. She looked at Zuri. "Zuri, could you give us a moment?" Zuri looked at me. I nodded. She went to the bedroom. Imani looked at me. She opened her expensive purse and pulled out a handkerchief. "I recognized you," she said. "At the wedding, when you walked in. I knew the face, but I couldn't place it until you mentioned the button." "The button you accused me of stealing," I said. "Yes." She took a deep breath. "I lied, Afia." I blinked. "What?" "I knew you didn't steal it," she whispered. "I lost it." I knew I lost it, but I was jealous. Jealous of me. I was your seamstress. I had nothing. "You had everything," Imani said, tears filling her eyes. "You had talent. You had grace. My mother, she liked you. She always said, 'Afia has magic hands.' She never complimented me. I was the daughter, but you were the artist." She looked down. "I was young and petty and cruel. I fired you because I couldn't stand seeing you shine while I felt invisible." I stared at her, the rich girl, the queen, jealous of the maid. It was absurd, and it was tragic. "You ruined my life," I said quietly. "I couldn't get a reference. I had to work in a factory. Zuri grew up hungry because of you." "I know," she sobbed. "I know, and I have carried that guilt for 30 years. When I saw you at the wedding, wearing that dress, looking like a queen, I knew God was punishing me." She reached into her bag again. She pulled out a checkbook. "I want to make it right," she said. "Name your price. $1.2 million. I'll write it now." I looked at the checkbook. It could buy me a house. It could buy Zuri a future. But it felt dirty. "I don't want your money, Imani," I said. "Please," she begged. "Let me pay for my sin." "You can't pay for dignity," I said, "and you can't buy forgiveness." I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked at the Hope Studio sign I had painted years ago but never used. It was leaning against the wall. "But," I said, turning back, "you can invest." "Invest?" "I have a dream," I said. "A studio. A place where I can teach women like me, who have nothing but their hands, how to sew, how to create, how to be independent." Imani wiped her eyes. "You want to open a school?" "Yes, Hope Studio. But I need a building. I need machines." Imani put the checkbook away. She stood up. Her eyes sparked. "I have a building," she said. "In the fashion district. It's empty, and I have connections with suppliers." "I don't want charity," I warned. "It's not charity," she said. "It's a partnership. You provide the talent, I provide the walls, and Zuri can manage it. She has a degree in business, doesn't she?" I looked at the bedroom door. Zuri was listening. "A partnership," I mused. "Please, Afia," Imani said, holding out her hand. "Let me help you build something. Let me try to be the woman you already are." I looked at her hand. It was manicured soft. Mine was rough-scarred, but when I took it, her grip was firm. "Okay," I said. "Partner." That night, after Imani left, Zuri and I sat on the porch. "Did that really happen?" she asked. "Are we business partners with the Ellington family?" "Life is strange, baby." I laughed. Zuri looked at the moon. "David called," she said, "and he's coming home. He wants to talk. He says he's proud of me for apologizing." "He's a good man," I said. "Keep him." "Mom," Zuri said, "there's one more thing." "What?" She pulled a small, sealed envelope from her pocket. It was old. The paper was yellowed. "I found this," she said. "In the dress, tucked deep in the bodice. You didn't sew this one." I looked at the envelope. It wasn't my handwriting. It was a messy, masculine scrawl. "To Afia." My heart stopped. "It's from Dad?" Zuri whispered. "Kofi." I took the envelope. "But he died instantly. The accident." "Maybe he wrote it before," Zuri said. "Maybe he hid it in your sewing box and you used the fabric." I opened it. My hands shook. It was a note, dated 2 days before he died. "Afia, my love, I know things are hard. I know I don't say it enough, but you are the sun. I'm working extra shifts. I'm saving. I found a red thread at the market today. The old woman said it binds soulmates across time. I bought it. I put it in your sewing kit. Use it to sew our daughter's wedding dress one day, and know that even if I'm not there, I am held to you by this thread. I love you. Kofi." I reached into this box of remnants on the table. I dug to the bottom. There it was, a spool of red thread. I had never used it. I thought it was just a scrap. I held it. I pressed it to my cheek. He had been there, all along, in the machine, in the fabric, in the dress. He knew, I whispered, tears flowing freely. He knew we would make it. Zuri hugged me. "We did, Mom," she said. "We made it." 6 months later. The fashion district of the city was usually gray and industrial, but today on the corner of 5th and Main, there was color. A new sign hung above the old brick warehouse. "Hope Studio, weave your destiny." The windows were sparkling. Inside, rows of sewing machines hummed with potential. Bolts of fabric, silk, cotton, velvet were stacked like rainbows on the shelves. I stood in the center of the room. I was wearing a simple linen dress I had made myself. Imani stood next to me. She was holding a clipboard, looking efficient and happy. "We have 50 students signed up for the first session," Imani said, "and a waiting list." 50, I asked. "We only have 20 machines." "We'll run shifts," Imani said. "Morning, afternoon, evening. We won't turn anyone away." Zuri walked out of the office. She was carrying a stack of flyers. She looked different. The heavy makeup was gone. Her hair was in a messy bun, a pencil stuck through it. She wore an apron over her jeans. She looked like me at her age. "Mom," she said, "the press is here. They want a photo." "Of who?" "Of the founders, all 3 of us." We walked outside. A photographer from the city paper was waiting. He grouped us together, me in the middle, Imani on my left, Zuri on my right. 3 women, one who sewed, one who paid, one who learned. "Smile," the photographer said. We didn't just smile. We beamed. It wasn't the fake smile of a society gala. It was the smile of women who had built something real. The studio wasn't just a school, it was a sanctuary. Women came from all over. Some were young girls who wanted to be designers. Some were mothers who needed to fix their children's clothes. Some were like me, women who had been invisible their whole lives. I taught them how to thread a needle, how to follow a pattern. But mostly, I taught them how to fix mistakes. Don't rip it out. I told a young girl named Maya who was crying over a crooked hem. But it's ugly, she sobbed. It's not ugly, I said. It's a detour. Cover it with a ribbon or embroidery. Make the mistake the most beautiful part of the dress. One afternoon, David came to visit. He walked through the rows of humming machines. He found Zuri in the back, teaching a class on draping. He watched her for a long time. I walked up to him. She's good at it, I said. She's amazing, David said. She's happier. She doesn't care about the country club anymore. She talks about thread counts and bias cuts. She found her hands, I said. Thank you, Afia, David said, for giving her back to me. A year later, Zuri and David renewed their vows. They didn't do it in a ballroom. They didn't do it with 500 guests. They did it in my garden. The petunias were in bloom. The sun was setting. There were only 20 people. Me, Imani, David's parents, a few close friends, and the students from Hope Studio. Zuri wore the dress, my dress, the galaxy dress. She hadn't changed a thing. She wore the crystals. She wore the pearls. She wore the coffee stains that had become stars. When she walked down the aisle, a path of grass lined with lanterns, she didn't look like a princess. She looked like a warrior. She looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was. I, Zuri, she said, holding David's hands. Take you, David, with all my flaws, with all my stitches. I, David, he replied. Take you, Zuri, and I promise to never let you feel small again. After the ceremony, we danced on the grass. Imani came up to me. She was holding a glass of wine. You know, she said, I think this is the best party I've ever been to. Why? I asked. Because no one is pretending, she said. 5 years passed. The studio grew. We opened a second location. We started a scholarship fund for girls who wanted to go to design school. I stopped sewing for money. I sewed for joy. I made quilts for the homeless shelter. I made baby clothes for the hospital. And then I made one special dress, a christening gown. Zuri had a baby, a little girl. She named her Nia, Purpose. I sat in the rocking chair in Zuri's nursery holding Nia. She was tiny, warm, and perfect. She has your eyes, Zuri said, sitting on the floor next to me. She has Kofi's chin, I whispered. I opened a small box. Inside was the christening gown. It was made of white linen, simple, but on the hem I had embroidered a single small red thread. What is that? Zuri asked, touching the red stitch. It's the thread your father bought, I said. The one from the spool. Zuri teared up. You saved it. I used a piece for your wedding dress, I said, and a piece for this. It connects us, Yumi, Nia, and him. I dressed the baby. The gown fit perfectly. She will know, Zuri said. I will tell her about the dress in the trash, about the crystals, about you. Tell her, I said. Tell her that her grandmother was poor, but tell her she was rich in the things that matter. I am 80 years old now. My hands shake a little too much to sew fine lace, so I teach the theory. I sit in the sun at the studio and watch the young women work. I hear the hum of the machines. It sounds like a choir. Sometimes I look at my hands. They are scarred. They are calloused. They are old. But they built this. They built a life. They built a family. They built a legacy. Imani passed away last winter. She left her share of the studio to Nia. In her will, she wrote, "To the girl who will carry the thread, don't ever let anyone tell you that you are less than. You are made of stars." I miss her, my enemy, my partner, my friend. I close my eyes. I see the dress, the galaxy dress. It is hanging in a museum now, the Museum of Textile History. The plaque underneath reads, "The Dignity Dress, Artist Afia Bakari, not seamstress. Artist." I smile. I am Afia. I am a mother, and I stitched my world back together. If you are reading this and you feel broken, if you feel like someone has thrown you away, Remember the needle. It hurts to be pricked. It hurts to be pushed through the fabric. But that is how you bind things together. That is how you make something new. Pick up your thread and start sewing.